Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Backstage Classical Career Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Katrina Stroud, and I'm a classical violinist who started playing at the age of 3. I graduated from the Robert McDuffie Center for Strings at Mercer University with my bachelor's in violin performance, and I'm pursuing my master's in music at the University of Michigan. In this series, I invite esteemed classical musicians onto the show and interview them to tell their stories and give advice to share with others and preserve their legacies. Today's episode is part 2 of violinist Annie Fullard's interview. Last week, we heard Annie talk about her musical background and early career in the Cavani String Quartet, and this week, Annie and I talk about how she, along with her colleagues in the Cavani String Quartet, developed the art of collaboration, which is their take on chamber music pedagogy and rehearsal techniques, and the importance of chamber music in today's society. In case you missed last week's episode and haven't had the pleasure to meet or work with Annie before, I'll give a brief introduction. Annie stands as a pioneering force in chamber music performance, education, and advocacy. With over 40 years in the Cavani String Quartet, she now serves as director and chair of chamber music at both the Peabody Institute and the Robert McDuffie Center for Strings. As a founding member of the Cavani String Quartet, Fullard has earned international recognition through extensive touring and distinguished honors including the Naumburg Chamber Music Award, Cleveland Quartet Award at Eastman, and as laureates at the Banff International and Fischoff competitions. While quartet in residence at the Cleveland Institute of Music, she collaborated with her Cavani colleagues to develop one of the nation's most respected chamber music programs. Her former students now perform in acclaimed ensembles around the country and serve as principal members of major orchestras. In February 2025, Annie co-authored The Art of Collaboration, Chamber Music Rehearsal Techniques and Team Building with Dorianne Cotter-Lockhart, published by Oxford University Press. This year, she received the Visionary Artist Award from the Chamber Music Center of New York, recognizing her continued influence on the art form's transformative impact. Now, let's pick up where we left off in Annie's interview. You talked a little bit about how the Cavani Quartet gained their residency at CAM. What was that part of your career like?
It was so exciting to join this school that, again, had such an incredible legacy, particularly to be able to interact with one of the greatest ensembles in the world, the Cleveland Orchestra. And those musicians who taught at CIM and were such a part of that fabric, and also then to be allowed to create a chamber music center culture there based on our respect for ensemble playing as being a universal goal, you know, rhythmic alignment, intonation, resonance, co-leadership. Those are all things that you have to be aware of as an orchestral player.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we celebrated that. We came in with a very positive attitude, and we're very fortunate. We would not have been able to do the residency without an organization that I want to mention called Chamber Music America.
Mm.
And if anyone interested in chamber music is not a member of this organization, you really should be. So, I mean, we were fortunate to receive more than 10 residency grants, which allowed us to go to universities all over the country and do sort of mini immersions in the community and in the residency, but it allowed us to be at CIM. And that's when we really started to feel that we had to be organized in our pedagogical approach, but I never would have said that sentence. I just remember the first coaching, and I think I was like 25, and I'm coaching like a grad student, and so I was like, "So what do you think?" And it's always been about let's do this together and trying to impart, just this love and passion for music making for itself, and then figuring out how to work together. And that's where I think the four of us really started to develop these rehearsal techniques, and we had to put silly names on them. So, chamber music aerobics and Shakespearean counting and, a little bit of silliness.
Mm-hmm.
Did I mention that we were very silly? So, and we did an amateur chamber music workshop. We had a residency for 10 years at a school right sort of in the heart of University Circle, a Cleveland City school called Cleveland School of the Arts. And I still talk to students from that time that we bonded with. That was amazing to go into that school every day and work with those kids, and then also work at the conservatory level. And we were able to curate our own series. So, I mean, we were thrown in, but Chamber Music America gave us a template of things that we needed to fulfill, and then we just went for it. And everyone in the quartet at that time, not only beautiful players, but everybody had a great work ethic. So we divided up duties. There wasn't just one of us sort of saying, okay, everybody, we better do a schedule. And we really collectively, everybody had great energy and different skill sets and good at communicating with teachers or organizing with the students. And we made sure to do that from the outset. And I think that's very important, to share the responsibility of the management of the quartet and to take that seriously, because that can be difficult if it ends up being on the shoulders of one or two individuals. And that should start from the beginning of how you approach kind of an equality in the quartet. And then, everybody has kind of a diverse skill set, and you never know what people might be good at. We were at CIM for 30 years, and such a golden period of life for all of us. Some of us met, and created families and had the children. And I felt like that was really great role modeling for all of the students, to see us being able to tour, to balance work and life and family, and work with obstacles and find balance in our life. I'm trying to think of, there's so many wonderful memories. I think, lastly, I would say that my friendships and relationships that blossomed from all of those years with the students is like my most treasured possession. I think I'm gonna cry.
Oh my God.
And I'm still in touch with so many people, and they're just so uh, incredible, like you.
Oh, thank you.
So, and just watching generations of people do such amazing things in the world, not only with music, but powerfully in many, many areas. Social justice, other arts, just other creative venues. And it's so exciting for me, or starting their own music school, or just having a class of, creating like a whole Suzuki school. And it's just really stunning
Yeah.
work that all of those students that we interacted with, and many of them are in professional string quartets.
Yes.
Which is my favorite thing. Whenever I get that call, I'm joining the Kronos quartet. Okay. Or, and it's just such a joy to go hear them play and see them sort of bringing their own life to this. So I think that's just such a treasure to me, those relationships, and they exist now with McDuffie students, and yeah, it's great. I'm very lucky.
Yes, and we're so lucky to have you as well. I mean, the amount of lives that you all have touched in the chamber music world and in the classical musical world. I was just at Madeline Island Festival this last summer, and one of the faculty members asked the kids, there was about maybe 30 of us. They were like, "Raise your hand if you've heard of LBAT, like live, breathe, and die." Your rehearsal technique. And I think most people raised their hands, which I thought was just incredible, because like it was my first time meeting a lot of these people, and I was like, wow, the Cavani effect.
It's a reciprocal thing, and it takes on its own life, and it's also nice to see that everybody is sharing that, and that it can be helpful to create a really positive and healthy rehearsal and performance vibe, which is what it does. So
For sure, for sure. And I will say it really has changed the way I view music, the way I collaborate with other people, the way I will just always go about doing music in the future, it has really affected me, and I'm so grateful for you to you
Well,
for that.
I'm grateful for you because it's completely mutual, and that year that we worked together and worked towards going to the competition and really delved deeply into the music and also the relationships in the group and how you bonded. I mean, that was sort of the best thing for me to watch how close you became and that trust and respect, and you'll be friends forever. And so that's a beautiful thing.
Yes. Now, switching gears a little bit. So, for those of you who don't know, Annie has a book. It's called The Art of Collaboration that she wrote with Dorianne Cotter Lockhart. And it's chamber music rehearsal techniques and team building. So, I wanted to ask you about how you came about writing this book and how people can use this for their rehearsal techniques and just classical music in general.
Well, the generative sort of impulse for this book came from my writing partner, Dorianne Cotter Lockhart. And she was writing her thesis to get her PhD from Fielding University. And she did her dissertation on chamber music rehearsal techniques and how they could be used for generative team building in beyond the concert hall. So, in other words, in the corporate world, in the business world, and just as a general way to help empower people to have sort of a approach that was co-leadership and collaborative. And as part of her research for her dissertation, she wrote to 9 different string quartets around the country. She also went to Eastman School and is a violinist, but she went into sort of the corporate sector, and she wanted to sort of combine those worlds that she saw. She thought there could be a sort of synthesis in this relationship. So she wrote to 9 quartets, and what she tells me is that I responded immediately and I sent her this list. I think it was on the computer. I printed out this is like sort of a template for approaching rehearsal. And I also was interested at that point of mentoring students at CIM at the collegiate conservatory level to be able to learn how to have some coaching techniques.
Mhm.
And because I think that's an essential and vital skill. The dry word is pedagogy. But the fact is, you need to know how to articulate, to inspire, and also really concretely help students open those pathways, technically, musically, so that they can improve. And there are ways to do that other than saying louder, softer, up bow, down bow. So I sent her this list, and she wrote back and said, "Oh, okay, I'd like to come and do my research and film you and be in Cleveland." And also, she met our mentor, Peter Soloff, who I should mention is one of the most powerfully kind and generous and brilliant musicians that I've ever encountered, and everybody feels that way about Mr. Soloff. And we taught together at CIM, and it was a just, we sort of would play off each other. We'd do classes together, and he was our coach, so it was very inspiring. So he was part of this equation, and she finished her dissertation, sent it out into the world, and it was on some website, and it kept getting hits by people who were interested in the chamber music rehearsal techniques. Not people in the corporate business world, but musicians, because they saw that. And there really isn't or wasn't there a guidebook specifically about practical techniques that address many, many different issues of the craft of chamber music playing, as well as conflict resolution and different behaviors and rehearsal preparation and bringing respect into the whole process. So she called me up and she said, I think we should turn this into a book. And then it took 10 years because she lives in France and I was here doing teaching and of course you know how I am. There's a lot of flailing about. And so, but we would meet in the mornings and we went through and really organized it. And she's a brilliant writer and organizer and sort of helped me. I would spiel or I would write something and then she would kind of figure it out. And I'm so glad that we wrote it before AI as an artificial intelligence had a presence, because these are all our words, for better or worse. And then we put it together in the chapters that we felt were most relevant and most helpful. And then we submitted a manuscript we went for it. We submitted to Oxford University Press. We were like, why not? And then we get this really nice note from the editor who had a great sense of humor and thought we were funny and thought there was potential. And they sent it out to reviewers, which is the process. And we got the reviews and they decided to turn us down. So we took the advice from the reviews and we went through the whole thing and we added in because we really valued what was said. And we sent it back. And then we got the reply, it's a go. We're going to publish the book. And I still can't believe it, really, that it's out there. And I think it serves two purposes. One is the voices of so many musicians, our peers, our mentors, people who we admire, who are great role models for not only the craft of playing chamber music, but they're great role models for humanity. Their voices are in this, their process. And their ideas. And we wanted to also make sure that the voices of people who we've lost were in this book so that everybody feels, we're just building on something. I want to emphasize that the inspiration from this book is completely collective, that every member of the Cavani Quartet from the first generation, the Mary, Erica, Susan, Annie, and then the 20 plus years with Kirsten, Mari, and Mary, and subsequently Eric and Catherine and Kyle, and our guests, violist Ayane, and now Sam Rosenthal have brought something completely unique, are part of these ideas. So the book is a celebration of many, many diverse ideas and a translation of those. I was only the voice in a way. Dorianne and I served to try to put this down on paper, but everyone in the group contributed to these ideas, and I love them all. There are, I think, 8 chapters, and some of them were our variations on a theme that we received in coachings, but then we amalgamated it into something that was repeatable, something that was an equalizer. And there's an emphasis on moving, being able to cue. There's the core of the book is about the character of the music, that you don't make a decision unless you discuss and feel and intuit and research so that you can interpret these notes as something that is alive and breathing and has a context in the world, but also can speak resonates today. And it was a true collaboration. It's a sort of equal partnership. I mean, the techniques are Cavani techniques, but Dorian had a way of helping me to articulate those, and you could do a step-by-step process. So, and there is no book that I know of that does this. And what I hope is that it's just a springboard for people to come up with their own ideas. We're not presenting this as you have to do this. It's to say, come up with more techniques and find ways to focus on the music making process rather than the fussy process. And how to give and take criticism, and then to understand all of these fundamental aspects of music making. The topics covered in the book are cueing and breathing, rhythmic alignment and ensemble, intonation, sound production, projecting expression, strategic listening, and balance. And then the technique you mentioned before is sort of what we would call the capstone. So that's LBAD, which is live, breathe, and die. And what that actually means is that it's a metaphor for you letting your ego die in service of someone else's idea. So we repeat this a lot in the book, and it's underlined by the words of wisdom from many different musicians and many different ensembles, which is that you really have to try everybody's ideas if it's your own.
Mm-hmm.
And that is transformative process for you. You grow from that. You learn from that. It may be something that's completely uncomfortable. And that when that happens in a mutual way, that really deepens your understanding of how somebody else's approach is. And then what happens is not a compromise, but an actual collaboration. And that's much bigger than an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could approach life this way, and I actually try to, sometimes even in the store, and I see somebody and I can tell, they're really frustrated or it's been a bad day, I'm like, well, go ahead, go ahead. Just, you sort of learn to see the world, to see other people's rhythm and what's happening and their vibe and it's like improvisation, daily improvisation in a really positive way of relating to the world and the rhythm of other human beings in a give and take kind of way. Makes it a lot nicer to approach life and, to be curious and amazed by things every day. I'm try to stay healthy in that way and also just be as silly as possible, really. I
Yes.
mean, really, like, I love a good whoopee cushion. Let's put it that way. I mean, that would be what, like, my favorite toy. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
If Haydn had a great sense of humor, I think that we should.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And for those of you who haven't checked out Annie's book, I would highly recommend it. It's full of so much wisdom about music and, as you said, about life, how to go about being a great human being and a chamber musician in all aspects of life. What do you think the importance of chamber music is in the world?
Well, when I was spieling a little bit before, I think, I sort of talked about going out in the world and approaching with a musical sensibility, relating to people in an improvisatory way and putting yourself in their shoes, in a sense, and try to imagine that we all have internal lives. We spend a lot of time worrying about our exterior and that form of identity, but I think as artists, We have a deeper self. And when you look for that in other people, I think you can kind of see a little more deeply. And I think everybody should listen to late Beethoven quartets. I think would change their lives. I didn't really mention sort of the aspect of working with living composers and how that can inform the way you work with the composers that we sort of call the canon of the repertoire. But I think being a chamber musician means you're always curious, you're always asking questions. I've learned so much about music that was written, classical music that is from all over the world. So every culture has their own classical music.
Mhm.
And that is filtered in by many, many living composers and also composers like Bartok, for instance, and even Haydn. I wish we could sort of all live in that chamber music mindset
Mhm.
that we do better together than alone. But the more individual we are, the more we can sort of we can celebrate other people's individuality. Does that
Right.
sort of make
Yeah,
sense?
for sure.
Because you have to own your own line,
Mhm.
right? You have to play in a way that every note is really compelling and meaningful to you and beautiful and well executed. But it doesn't mean anything unless you can do it. You have to do it together. Then it's so poignant and you don't lose yourself. You gain more. I think it helps people to have less fear. If you think about, you're walking on stage, you're not alone. We're all doing this together and you're walking in life and, other people have shared experiences or they have, better yet, different experiences
Mhm.
that aren't your experience. And isn't it more interesting to understand more about other people? I'm much more interested in other people, how other people think and where they're from and what they do and how they process learning. So, yeah, I think we need to think a little bit more about having a sort of improvisation with other human beings.
Mhm.
And that's kind of a chamber music ideal.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think we should all, in all careers, just strive for more connection with each other. And so I always close out with this one question. What advice would you give to aspiring professional musicians?
Be curious, be humbled by the people and the music and the creativity that's around you. Trust yourself. Have conversations with as many people as possible. Travel. And if you can't physically travel, travel in your mind. And let fear go. Because if we're in this artistic community, there is nothing to be scared of because of the intrinsic value of what we do. Each of us creates in our own way. And experiment and listen more than you talk, which is advice I should take. And especially for musicians, just listen to music all the time. Just keep listening and finding pieces that you fall in love with and letting that inspire you and be a historian. Understand the context of the world and how we function together and how incredible the human race is and how idiotic we are. How we repeat the same things. But it is the artists that exist from before times. That's what we look at to understand the present and to understand the future. And don't forget about how important, how valuable that is to society. It's our power to see the world in kind of a imaginative lens. So I guess, to be curious and let your fear go and seek out people that reflects that back to you.
Yeah.
And no mean teachers.
Mm.
It's unnecessary. So, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, it's a really wonderful life that we get to have.
Yes. Well, that's great advice. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for coming on my podcast and for everything you've contributed to the classical music world.
Well, thank you, and I love this podcast.
Thank you to Annie Fullard for another fantastic episode and interview. I truly believe that we can all become better musicians and better people through chamber music. The impact of the Cavani String Quartet and the art of collaboration is profound in this country and has truly changed my life. To learn more about the Cavani String Quartet, you can visit cavanistringquartet.com, and you can order The Art of Collaboration, Chamber Music Rehearsal Techniques, and Team Building by Annie Fullard and Dorian Cotter-Lockhart on Amazon. Thank you so much for joining me on Backstage Classical Career Conversations, and be sure to subscribe to the show and rate us on the platform you're using. To donate to the show to help us keep creating content, click on the support link in the description. I'm Katrina Stroud, and it was great to see you here. Until next time, stay inspired and listen to the stories of others.